Chapter 3. The Invisible Sign. Every person is special. I sincerely believe this. Each of us wants to feel good about himself or herself, but to me it is just as important to make others feel the same way. Whenever I meet someone, I try to imagine him or her wearing an invisible sign that says, "Make me feel important." I respond to this sign immediately, and it works wonders. Some people, however, are so caught up in themselves that they fail to realize that the other person wants to feel important too. I've already told you how I once waited in a long reception line to shake hands with the company's sales manager, only to have him treat me as if I didn't exist. I'm sure he didn't remember the incident. In fact, he probably was never aware of how much he had hurt me. Yet after all these years, I still remember, so it obviously had a powerful impact on me. I learned an important lesson about people that day, which I have never forgotten. No matter how busy you are, you must take time to make the other person feel important. Many years ago, I wanted to buy a new car. It was at the time when two-toned cars had just been introduced, and I had my heart set on a black and white Ford. Since I never liked to buy what I couldn't afford, I had saved up enough money to pay cash. The car was going to be my birthday present to myself. With money in my purse, off I went to the Ford dealer's showroom. Obviously, the salesman didn't take me seriously. He had seen me drive up in my old car and assumed that I couldn't afford to buy a new one. In those days, women couldn't get credit as easily as a man could, so very few of us ever purchased cars for ourselves. We weren't what salesmen considered live prospects. The Ford representative would hardly give me the time of day. If he was trying to make me feel unimportant, he couldn't have done a better job. At noontime, he simply excused himself, saying he was late for a lunch date. I wanted that car in the worst way, so I asked to see the sales manager, but he was out and wouldn't be back until after 1 p.m. So, with time to kill, I decided to take a walk. Across the street, I strolled into a Mercury dealer's showroom just to look, for I still intended to buy that black and white Ford. They had a yellow model on the floor, and although I liked it very much, the sticker price was more than I had planned to spend. However, the salesman was so courteous and made me feel as though he really cared about me. When he found out it was my birthday, he excused himself and returned a few minutes later. 15 minutes later, a secretary brought him a dozen roses, which he handed to me for my birthday. I felt like $1 million. Needless to say, I bought a yellow Mercury instead of a black and white Ford. That salesman got the sale because he made me feel important. It didn't matter to him that I was a woman driving an old car. I was a human being, and in his eyes that meant I was somebody special. He had seen the invisible sign. Every leader should understand that God has planted seeds of greatness in every human being. Each of us is important, and a good leader can bring these seeds to fruition. It's unfortunate that most of us go to our graves with our music still unplayed. It's been said that we use only 10% of our God given ability and that the other 90% is never tapped. Look at Grandma Moses, who started painting at the age of 75. She went on to become a world renowned artist, but certainly she must have had her talent at an earlier age. Wouldn't it have been a pity if Grandma Moses had never realized her God given artistic ability? Make people feel important. They are. I believe every person has the ability to achieve something important, and with that in mind, I regard everyone as special. A manager should feel this way about people, but it's an attitude that can't be faked. You've got to be honestly convinced that every human being is important. This is a basic lesson, one that you have probably heard many times before, yet I remind you of it because many business people become so involved in their work that they forget to apply it. Business is business, Mary Kay, they tell me. You don't have to treat employees that way. My workers shouldn't expect me to make them feel important. That's not what I'm paid for. But they're wrong. Making people feel important is precisely what a leader is paid for, because making people feel important motivates them to do better work. It was John D. Rockefeller who said, "I will pay more for the ability to deal with people than for any other commodity under the sun." High morale is a significant factor in increasing productivity, which means that a good leader should continually strive to boost the self-esteem of every individual in his or her organization. My experience with people is that they generally do what you expect them to do. If you expect them to perform well, they will. Conversely, if you expect them to perform poorly, they'll probably oblige. I believe that every I believe that average employees who try their hardest to live up to your high expectations of them will do better than above average people with low self-esteem. Motivate your people to draw on that untapped 90% of their ability, and their level of performance will soar. How does a leader make people feel important? First, by listening to them. Let them know you respect their thinking and let them voice their opinions. As an added bonus, you might learn something. A friend of mine once told me about an executive of a large retail operation who once told one of his branch managers, "There's nothing you could possibly tell me that I haven't already thought about before. Don't ever tell me what you think unless I ask you. Is that understood?" Imagine the loss of self-esteem that branch manager must have felt. It must have taken all the wind out of his sails and adversely affected his performance. When an individual's self-esteem is deflated, his level of energy is decreased. On the other hand, when you make a person feel a great sense of importance, he or she will be walking on cloud nine and the level of energy will skyrocket. Responsibility without authority can be destructive. People also feel important when they're given responsibility. But responsibility without authority can destroy a person's self-esteem. Have you ever noticed a little girl's reaction when she's been given her first babysitting assignment with her younger brother? She bubbles with excitement because she has received the status of a grown-up. But if she's given the responsibility to watch after him, she should also be given the authority to send him to bed early if he misbehaves. That retail executive not only failed to listen to his branch manager, but also stripped him of all authority to make decisions. Consequently, the branch manager developed low self-esteem and left the company for a major competitor. When given authority as well as responsibility in the new job, he began to feel good about himself and contributed innovative retailing concepts to his new employer. His contributions were so valuable, in fact, that he was rapidly promoted to a higher position than his former boss. An attorney told me about a meeting his firm conducted for the officers of a local bank. One of his partners was in charge of making the arrangements for a luncheon and had sent out for cold cuts from a nearby deli. The law firm didn't make a very good impression. Several of the firm's partners complained, so a few weeks later a female law clerk was given the responsibility, along with the authority, to arrange a luncheon meeting with another bank with a slightly higher budget. Knowing how important the luncheon was to the firm, the clerk felt honored to be responsible. She prepared delicious cold hors d'oeuvres at her home the night before and had some hot foods delivered from a restaurant in the building. The clerk acted as hostess, greeting each banker as he or she walked into the firm's offices. She did a wonderful job because the responsibility of being in charge of the luncheon made her feel important. The affair was a huge success. Several notes were received from the bankers commenting on the lovely luncheon, and shortly thereafter the bank began giving some of its law business to the firm. Let people know you appreciate them. I recommend that you frequently let your people know how much you appreciate them. I've never yet met a person who didn't want to be appreciated. And if that's the way you feel, you should express your appreciation. Even if it's only for showing up to work on time, let the person know that you value punctuality. "I think it's great, Jack, that you arrive at the office every morning at 8 a.m. sharp. I admire people who are punctual." Say that to a worker and notice how rarely he comes in late thereafter. Or perhaps you like a person's polite or gentle mannerisms. There has to be something to appreciate in every person. Let it be known. Don't keep it a secret. At Mary Kay, we believe in putting beauty consultants and sales directors on a pedestal. Of all people, I most identify with them because I spent many years as a salesperson. My attitude of appreciation for them permeates the company. When independent Salesforce members visit our world headquarters, for example, we go out of our way to give them the red carpet treatment. Every person in the company treats them royally. As you probably have heard, we offer independent sales directors, based on sales volume, the opportunity to earn the use of pink Cadillacs. To my knowledge, we were the first company to award such a fine automobile to so many people. We chose Cadillacs because they have always epitomized excellence. When a Mary Kay sales director drives a pink Cadillac, she is recognized as a person who has done an outstanding job. It signifies that she is very important to our organization. And of course, once she achieves this important status, she doesn't ever want to relinquish the privilege. We go first class across the board, and although it's expensive, it's worth it because our people are made to feel important. For example, each year we take the top sales directors and their spouses on deluxe trips to places such as Hong Kong, Bangkok, London, Paris, Geneva, and Athens. We spared no expense, and although it cost a lot extra per person to fly the Concorde, cruise on the Love Boat, or book suites at the elegant Georges V in Paris, it was our way of telling them how important they are to our company. Even in cities that are used to pomp and ceremony, we attract considerable attention. People in the streets stop to watch our beautiful women being escorted from the hotel to limousines, wondering who they are. These women feel like royalty, and to us, they are. From the beginning, we have always believed in going first class with our people. If something's too expensive, we'd rather forget it than economize. For instance, we might settle for one elegant banquet a year instead of two moderate ones. Why do we do it this way? Well, think of the feeling of importance you get from dining at a first-rate restaurant. Everything is perfectly done, the cordial greeting of the maitre d', the exquisitely prepared food, everything. And it gives you a sense of satisfaction not experienced in a less elegant establishment. Just as a fine restaurant extends itself to make its customers feel special, we do everything we can to make our people feel the same way, and if they don't, we're not doing our job. I think it's essential that every leader remember that invisible sign: make me feel important.